What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverseevolve video. Alright soldiers, welcome back. So in today's video we're going to be doing a review of the most recent BCSs, and I thought it was only going to be just Florida, but it looks like there's two other events that happened, so we're going to cover all of them in this video. And alright, starting off with Tampa, Florida. So I heard that this event was very small, like 60 people. I'm not sure if that's like the correct number or anything, but that's what I heard. But going from that, I know that there's a huge percentage for Forestcraft, 28%, and then, Forestcraft leading into Swordcraft, and then going into Runecraft, Dragoncraft, and Abysscraft having the little smaller percentages, a little bit under 15%, which is okay, and then Havencraft having a low percent, and sadly, Uma not having any representation, but don't worry, with those JP releases, Uma will be back in the face of Shadowverseevolve soon. And then we have a 5% with Idolmaster Cinderella Girls. Alright, and getting into our first list, we have Connor from Boats Don't Sink. So it's glad to see that he is representing Lashana Rune, because I am tired of seeing Kuon. I'm just tired of seeing Kuon. So I'm glad now Lashana has some light with the new upgrades that they got in the deck. Looking at the deck now, it seems pretty interesting. I do like the Craving Splendor that he's rocking in the deck just for that extra heal. And going into those Lloyds is just a little hard because it's a card that it's not evolved, so you can't really hit it with Surefire Bullet, and it's a 4 defense, so it feels kind of weird to remove him. And I'm also liking the Central Street 2 for the 5 damage on your enemy's turn. And then with the Alchemical Lore, so this is a set 1 card, and I think it does wonders against Forest, or at least Puppet Forest, because when they set up their board, and if it isn't buffed from Anastasia, well, Alchemical Lore is going to deal with everything. I wonder which matchups this might have actually came up with instead of like Puppet Forest, but I'm glad that he's rocking this card. All around, I think this is a pretty solid list, of course using the new Medusas to search after 2-cost cards and whatnot, but I think this is a pretty solid deck list. Alright, and moving on, we have Sun's second place Puppet Forest deck. And I'm very excited to talk about this deck because this is the first time we've seen any Puppet Forest like competitive play, so this is going to be interesting to go over. And of course, if you've watched the Inverse Academy episode for Puppet Forest, then you already know how this deck functions. It wants to sit there and build up some puppets in the EX area to go ahead and use Heartless Battle and cards like that, to go ahead and put a Victoria and Lloyd so you can have some generation of combo for free. And then when you get into your combos turn, you're going to be looking to make either an Elf Song or a Fashionista play with a Sakuna, something that's going to do a lot of damage or just do a lot in one turn to either build an entire giant board or you're going to swing for a big amount of damage. But I am noticing that this deck has every form of puppet generation in Forestcraft. We have the Automaton Soldier, and then we have the Liam with the Flower Doll. I think this is a pretty all-around good Puppet Forest deck. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the Nature's Guidance. So in my personal build, I think I only had like one Nature's Guidance. Either 1 or 2 Nature's Guidance, and I don't know, that might be for Fairy Wisp that I might have in my build. But I think this is just a very good card, especially paired up with Liam. Just looking at top 3, potentially getting a Puppeteer card and then bouncing Liam back to your hand and then drawing a card. I think that's just a really good combo. But yeah, congratulations, Sun, for getting second place in Tampa, Florida. I hope you have success in the future with this deck, or whatever deck you will be taking in the future. Alright, and then next up we have Geo Module's Thief Sword deck. Alright, so the biggest problem that I had in this deck was having a late game play outside of the new Dance of Usurpation, the new spell card that's going to be burning you. I was really wondering what to rock instead of this, but I see that Geo is going to be running the Sylvia the Condemner, which is actually a very good late game boss monster card that I didn't really think about because I wasn't really looking towards the neutral classes for the late game cards. But I think that this card has definitely good wonders, especially if you get into the late game. This card is not a bad card to have in your hand, just to spend 2 to go ahead and hard remove something that costs 5 or more. Very good into the Anastasia turn. And then on top of that, with its fanfare effect to go ahead and burn along with the Dance of Usurpation, which you're going to be using to be dealing 8 to them, and then, X amount to the field as well. So I think this is just a very good card to have. Alright, so what I'm really liking in the deck is the Ralmia combo. The Ralmia Sword Flash Panther combo is actually pretty nice here, just to give this that extra attack. Sword Flash Panther already has the rush, so you don't have to worry about the rush on Realmia, but you do want to go ahead and use the Realmia Evo for however many X amount of cards are on the field, and you're going to get that big buff with Realmia, spending those extra 3 play points, and then go ahead and add an extra 1 to that from the Sword Flash Panther attack with the Fanfare on Sword Flash Panther. So I think it's just a very good combo to do, and especially if you've run out of Octuses, since you're definitely going to be looping your Octuses in this deck with the Sword Flash Panther combo. But you know, vice versa, if you run into the other one, you use that. And then once you're out of Octuses, you then go for the Realmia combo if you're going for a closing of the late game. But all around, Geo, congratulations for getting 3rd place in Florida with Thief Sword, making a good representation of Usurpation. And I am hoping that you have some great success in the future. Alrighty, and last but not least, we have Sam's 4th place Disdain Dragoncraft deck. So we all love and or hate Disdain Dragon, but we cannot deny that Galmu is back and packing with some new cards. So let's go ahead and get into these cards for the new Disdain deck. Alright, and before we get into the new Disdain cards, I do want to talk about Ozzy. So this is going to be the go-to late card for Dragoncraft, I'm calling it now. This is just a very good late game boss monster card, because you already know you're playing on curve when playing Dragoncraft. Of course you don't have the biggest hand, but you know, when we have empty play points to play big boss monsters like these, and then we get to 8 play points before our opponent can, swinging with a big boss monster with Storm evolved is just insane. And of course, it's going to be easy to get the 8 face-up followers in your Evo deck, especially when you have lots of Evolve followers that you can use. So you can definitely use the Galmu, which you need to for your game plan. Apostle of Disdain's a good card. Draknir is just the good go-to 3-cost card that's going to recover that health that you're going to be paying your own followers with. I think this deck is just a all-around solid pick for Dragoncraft. Alright, so I do want to talk about the new cards, so let's start with Sneer of Disdain. So when you play Galmu, it's going to be awesome that you can go ahead and do the Galmu Evolve effects, but go ahead and pinging another follower for 1 so they can get their effects from them being pinged is just absolutely amazing for the deck. And of course, that being ran as a 2 of isn't too crazy, but the new 3 of cost card that you're going to need, and probably a lot of Dragoncraft decks, is the Dragon Soul Princess. So this is just a good card to just look at the top 5. Any Wormkin follower is going to be put into your EX area, and if Overflow is active for you, you can go ahead and play it. Which isn't insane, because Overflow is what we want to do in Dragoncraft, so I think this card is just pretty gas. Alright, and even though Dragon Soul Princess is a very good card, I do want to talk about the Zealot of Disdain. So this card, just go ahead and playing it and then pinging your enemy leader for 1 is just good too. And then if you use this for Galmu to go ahead and play it, ping everything for 1, this is going to be a lot of damage to face, I'll tell you that. But I'm not going to get into it because that's not the type of video we're going to be making today. If you want to see a full description of the new Disdain stuff, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll cover the next Disdain stuff. But until then, we're going to focus on the BCS decks. But an all-around solid list. Sam, congratulations for getting 4th place in Florida. I hope you have very good success with whatever future decks you're going to be rocking in the future, and I hope you do well at your next event. Alright, so moving into Australia. So in the Australia event, it seems that Forestcraft was the main denominator. Right under that, it was Abysscraft. I see that these aren't in the biggest of order, or, you know, it goes from the highest to lowest. But it seems like Forestcraft and Abyss were just running wild in Australia. Alrighty, and first up we have Chapper's Runecraft deck, and I do want to talk about this deck because this seems like a very spell chain variant of the deck. Alright, so looking at the first good card, I think this was a sleeper underrated pick, or this is just one of the good cards for Runecraft. Verdict Discovery. This card is just so good. You can do this on your opponent's turn to draw 2 cards and discard a card, and of course if we're running Spell Chain, go ahead and getting a Trail of Light to dig for that extra card. I think this is just a pretty gas combination of cards. But looking at the deck, it looks like we don't have any Onmyoji cards outside of the Curse Crafter, which is just good removal all around. So I think this deck is pretty solid. If you're going to be wanting to run something different for Runecraft that's not Kuon, or just the Kuon Onmyoji chain, which can sometimes be very breakable, but if you have a very spell-heavy version of it, you can definitely do a lot of things on your opponent's turn and on yours. But yeah, congratulations Chappers for getting 1st place at your event, rocking Runecraft nonetheless, so I hope you have success in your future events. Alrighty, next up we have Williams 2-cost second place Abysscraft deck, which is kind of weird because it's 2-cost Abyss and you got second, but that's pretty awesome. Alright, and looking at this deck, this is a very solid build. Now, I have not seen this card played. I was wondering if someone was going to incorporate any of the Idolmaster 2-cost cards in the deck, because I've seen a lot of just basic Abysscraft, you know, mainline stuff. I love it when they incorporate Cinderella Girls and Uma cards into these decks. But looking at this card, this paired up with Zealot of Lust is just so good, just because you can deal yourself 2 or deal yourself 1, whatever you need to do. Sanguine is active for you. You go ahead and play this card and then deal something an extra 3 and go ahead and finish it off with Zealot of Lust or swing it into a follower, however you want to divide up the damage, of course. But I think this card is just paired up very well with that card. And then also being able to flood up the board with a 1-cost follower, especially if you evolve this turn, you know, with a Rule and Eye or something like that, I think it's very good. And of course we have our other 2-cost cards, which is just good removal, like Whispers of a Dream, Surefire Bullet, Razor Claw, stuff like that. But it's just a regular 2-cost Abysscraft deck, how it usually is built, just with that new Idolmaster card, which is very spicy. Alright, and then moving on, we have our 3rd place list with Lawrence with Puppet Forest. Alright, so I don't want Puppet Forest to be that deck that's going to be like Hero Sword. It's going to be the deck that we're going to see a lot. There's only going to be like maybe 1 or 2 card differences, which, you know, a whole bunch of the card core is like the same. Like, we need our Anastasias, we need our Noahs, we need our Orcuses and stuff like that, Goddess by the Sunlight Sea. If you come with a very crazy puppet build, I'll probably glaze it pretty hard, but I think most of these builds are going to look the same except for like 2 cards, which in this deck has the 2 card key difference, so I wonder how it performed during the tournament. But looking at the 1 card that really isn't a lot of Forcecraft builds anymore is the Ivy Spellbomb. Just a good card to deal 5 to something, and then especially if you're on combo 3 to deal 3 damage to its leader, get some good burn in, especially with the, you know, 7 play point Orcus play to remove followers. And then in the following turn, if you don't get to do your Orcus play or something like that, go ahead and hard remove something and then deal 3 damage. Just hypothetical, of course. But I am curious as to how often Roach came up, because I know people don't really value Roach in this deck, because, you know, sometimes the combo and then being able to evolve is just very hard. It's not as big as the play as maybe like a Sukuna into Anastasia play, like, or something like that, just because it's just a little more expensive. But I just wonder how it performed in the tournament. But yeah, those are really the biggest differences in the deck, so congratulations Lawrence for getting 3rd place, and I hope you do well in future tournaments. Alrighty, and last but not least, with Puppet Forest, we have Kuromoka's Puppet Forest deck. And I'm seeing that Kuro also was running the Roach and the Spellbomb package, but I'm also seeing the one of Spinaria, which is actually kind of slipped on because Anastasia came out and kind of replaced the 5-cost, you know, Forcecraft follower route. But this is also not a bad card to just look at top 4 and add potentially 2 cards to your hand. But yeah, I wonder if that ever came up as the 5-cost card, being that you played for the Goddess of the Sunlight Sea, if you needed to get the combo up and then recover the play points and whatnot. I wonder if that ever came up in tournament. But of course, congratulations Kuromoka for getting 4th place at this tournament. I hope you have more success in the future with future tournaments, and I hope you do well. Alright, so getting into our last set of results here. So we are in the UK, we're at Cardiff BCS, with the most representation being Swordcraft, and right under that we have Runecraft, and then right under that we have Dragoncraft with Abysscraft matching as the same, and then right under that is Forcecraft, and then we have Havencraft with no representation from our crossover sets. And forgive me if I mispronounce this username, but we have Spectacular Designs 1st place Natura Sword deck. Alright, so now it's time to talk about the new upgrades that this deck got. So of course we have the regular Natura Sword line with the Mistalina endgame, and the Viridian Magna removal with the Baleon mid-game, of course, and then the Thief as a secondary. But let's talk about the new cards. Alright, so let's talk about either of the Warrior Wings. So this is a pretty boss card for this deck, just because you can search for a commander and officer card, and with the Natura line you're going to be drawing and discarding a whole bunch of Swordcraft followers, so this can definitely proc very early and easily in this deck. And then taking the fact that this Fanfare effect can just search for almost 75% of your deck. And of course there are a lot of commander and officer cards, but let's talk about what the cards are after we get into the next engine. Alright, so let's talk about Roland. So this is a card I kind of slept on, I'm not going to lie to you. The card doesn't feel fast enough for me, especially going on 4. but you have to realize that if you're going to be playing more of a slower pace deck, I'm still used to a very fast paced meta with Hero Sword. Yes, I'm going to sound like I'm from like 5 sets ago, but let me tell you, the aggro is traumatizing, guys. I know if you weren't here when you didn't play in set 3, but aggro is very traumatizing, especially if it's RNG aggro. Like, the skill, I will agree with Dean, with the skill just being not up there when you just put cards on the field and then say, answer it. And if you don't answer it, then you essentially lose. So it's just a very traumatizing experience, especially being a rune player. But that's outside of my little rant. Alright, so I know I slept on this card, but I think when you get into the evo, the card is just really good just because you can give anything +2 attack or +2 defense, or being able to engage to make sure something doesn't take more than 3 damage. I think Durandal is just a very good card, but the one hard part about it is the 2-card combo. I think that's just very hard, especially running it at low ratios. And then now seeing that Aether is a one of is very good just because, you know, in the late game we're going to need as much board presence as possible. So I think Durandal is going to be one of those cards you play in the late game, paired up with either Mestelina or, you know, Roland if you need to. But I think the Evo is just very good to pair up with the entire ability together just because you're able to draw at the end of turn if you have both of them on the field, and then giving your leader that plus defense that you might need in the mid game. But all in all, congratulations for getting the top prize with Swordcraft, Natura Sword no less, in set 8 with the new upgrades. Alrighty, and next up we have Uban Zinc 2nd place Havencraft deck. And look at that, we have an updated Haven ward list, which is very good to look at because this deck is kind of underrated. Oh, and it makes me so excited when I see a Havencraft that has every aspect of the game prepared for it. You have the early game Bellringer with the Amethyst Lion that can go into some more 2-cost cards. Then if you still have these ward/storm cards on your field, Ruby Falcon's going to do wonders in the mid game, so you can swing for some extra damage. But I do want to talk about the removal with John d'Arc and Holy Lancer and Equoit's Light. Just good removal in the mid game and board wipes and stuff like that. But what I don't want to miss in the mid game is the new card Angel of the Iron Steed. So you play a 4-cost that summons another ward card that also draws. I think that's just very good. And then I think getting this card off of Wilbert is just amazing too, just because you can get this off of Wilbert, go ahead and draw your card, and then you have 3 wards on the field. And technically with tokens still technically hitting the cemetery, I think you still get the extra burn with Wilbert, so I think this card is just pretty good too. Alright, and lastly, I want to talk about Ektar. So this is going to be the card that's probably going to close out the games. Not bad to get this card along with either of the White Wing, so you can play these both out. They get their fanfares, you play out the 2-cost cards, which also get their fanfares too, and then banishing those Havencraft followers that you know you're not going to see for the rest of the game to go ahead and give everybody a buff. But I want to say congratulations Uban for getting 2nd place with a very spicy Ward Haven list, and I hope you have some future success in your future tournaments. Alrighty, next up we have Kino's 3rd place Thief Sword deck. Alright, so it looks like the Ralmia Sword Flash Panther combo is very common, so forgive me if I didn't know about that. But what I really like is that Kino is also using the Angelic Maid, which is going to give something a higher defense and higher attack while also healing you for 3. Yes, it might feel a little weird to have a 2-cost card that doesn't really draw you a card in quick timing in Swordcraft, but giving something a really big buff is also nice too. Alright, and last thing I want to talk about is the Tsubaki for the deck. So having the 5 cards to make sure you can hard remove something, and then having the 10 cards to make sure that this follower has Storm, because it has the 3 defense, so you don't have to worry about the Disciple or Usurpation getting like sniped or anything. It's just a very good card to have. I know Disciple swings for a whole lot more if they have the 10 cards in Cemetery, but Tsubaki is not a bad option for a second choice of Storm. But summarizing it all up, congratulations Kino for getting 3rd place with your Thief Sword deck. I'm glad you added in the Tsubaki. The card is very beautiful and I like it in the regular art and in the UR, so I hope you have success in your future tournaments. Yo, are they allowed to do this? That's a crazy name to have, by the way, as your BCS like Bushy Navi name. That's absolutely insane. But we have our 4th place Puppet Forest deck. I'm not saying that. You're not going to make me say that. But congratulations to getting 4th place. Let's see what the key differences in this Puppet Forest deck is. So getting into the first key difference, we have Cassiopeia, just being able to deal X amount of damage to different followers for cards being their EX area in hand, because of course they're going to be filling up our EX area with puppets, and we're going to be using cards from our hand to fill up that EX area. So dealing X divided up for however many the situation might depend on, and 5 play points or more when playing Cassiopeia might really depend on up to you. So I think this card is really good, especially going into tempo, either going first or second, just because in this deck you have some pretty linear opening turns, because turn 1, you know, we're only going to be playing junk and stuff like that. 2 can depend between Liam and Flower Princess Doll, whatever you do. And then 3, if you rock the Automaton Soldier, which I've seen so far on every list that people are rocking Automaton Soldier. So Automaton Soldier in 3, you have a full EX area essentially. And then in whatever turns that you need to, if your opponent builds a very scary board, going into Cassiopeia is just not bad. But I think that is the main difference outside of the Fina being a 2-of in this deck, so congratulations for getting 4th place with Puppets. And alright soldiers, we made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. It means a lot to me that you watch my content and stuff like that. But I'm very excited everybody was able to put in their own little splash of what they like in their decks, or what really works, like Ivy Spellbomb and Puppets, that new Idolmaster 2-cost card that I've never seen in any other build, but really did work for the deck if you have Sanguine active, things like that. But alright soldiers, make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight, and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do.